Hey folks, this is Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast, where we share stories and insights from everyday fighters just like you. Today we're going to be talking with Blaze Pearson. He is a father and a martial arts instructor. Really had a great conversation with him. A couple things that really stood out. One was that Tim telling stories about how he and his brother first started getting into martial arts as children, and not being able to afford actual lessons, they got into books and did their best to start learning through books. But also getting into later in life where he and his family were struck with a tragedy, and how that has shaped the way he now approaches life and martial arts with his family. So really fascinating and informative conversation with Blaze. But before we get into that interview, I wanted to get into our episode spotlight. Now, as a reminder, our spotlights are just little snippets that we wanted to share about organizations that I think could use a little bit more exposure. I think they do great work, and it's something that I think would be useful for them, just for you to know about them. These folks have no idea who I am, anything about this podcast. It's just something that I want to share with you. And today I wanted to talk to you about Heroes of the Second World War. Now, this is an organization that was started at the time by a high school student. Name is Rishi Sharma. And he started learning about World War II and the sacrifices that our men and women in the military at the time had endured, and what it meant for our country. He was so inspired by them and their story that he made it his mission to go out and not only speak to the people still surviving, veterans from World War II, but also to record those interviews and make them available to the public for free. Just an amazing story, not only of Rishi, but also all the collective stories from these amazing folks. There are over 600 World War II veterans that die every single day, and he's on a mission to capture their stories before we're not able to get the benefits of them anymore. So that is the Heroes of the Second World War. You can find out more about Rishi and his mission and get access to those interviews by going to heroesofthesecondworldwar.org. So that is our spotlight. And with that, let's jump into our interview with Blaze Pearson.
I've grown up here in Georgia, in North Georgia, right around Atlanta. Kind of grew up in the burbs of Atlanta, and gone around from Marietta, which is sort of well known. Lived out there most of my adult life. Had some kids, needed bigger house for little money. Moved out here to Hiram.
Okay, nice, man, nice. So, growing up, did you is that where you were introduced to martial arts, or I mean, was there other sports you did, or what was how was that?
Yeah, I was kind of a late bloomer, but around 10 or 11 I started playing baseball, and I played baseball and I did football all the way through high school. Thought I was going to go play in college, and then I blew my knee out and realized you were supposed to have good grades to go to college for football.
And was that really part of it?
Right? I had no clue until I turned 18. But yeah, I played, a lot of sports in and out through that. I played basketball every day for most of my life. As soon as I could walk, I was trying to throw a basketball at a goal, but I didn't like to get yelled at to do it. I was willing to get yelled at for baseball and football, but I wasn't. I didn't need anybody to yell at me to play basketball. I could just go in the driveway or to the park. Or
are you talking about coaching?
Right,
okay.
Right. I didn't want it, because it was fun the way it was.
Okay, yeah.
And I played so much, I felt like I learned, but it really taught me a lot about my body. So it really helped me in sports that I did, any sport that I did. But really, as far as martial arts is concerned, my dad is a martial artist, and my mom dabbled in it a little bit. And I was just really into fighting when I was younger. I have an older brother, and we were really into fighting and really into the like martial arts movies of the 80s. That's all it was. I mean, when I would go play with my friends, we played ninja, and we were either Van Damme or Chuck Norris or something like that, running through the woods killing bad ninjas. We were the good ninjas killing the bad ninjas.
Michael Dudikoff, and
yes, American Ninja all day long. Loved it. Even now, I just love it for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But I would say, really the introduction to really wanting to go further with martial arts was the UFC. My brother called me up one night and said, dude, there's this thing on TV. It's just like blood sport. There's no rules. They're locked in a cage. And these guys are just going at it. It's only, been watching it for a few minutes. And this skinny guy has beat two people. And I was like, wow, crazy. And I was only 13. This is 93. Yeah. And he's like, dude, I'm gonna pop in a VHS tape. We're gonna, so you need to see this. And so watch that with my brother. And honestly, a lot of people say, well, I watched that and it really turned me on to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, to me, I thought, well, that sucks. Who wants to do that? I want to
throw.
Yeah. I want to punch people and do a bunch of kicks and stuff like that. But that really got me interested, but we were broke. So the only places near us to do any martial arts were, strip mall dojos. And even back then, I remember they were like $75 a month. And it was like, $100 to get the gi. And it just wasn't going to happen for me. I was able to do football and baseball back then because we would do fundraisers. It was like $30 and then you just sold stuff to pay the difference. But as far as I knew that wasn't going to happen at the dojo. So I did a few free weeks at places and then really just started working with my brother. I mean, him and I really we got really interested. We started buying books. I still have them today. That, very rudimentary, but important information that I grabbed from these books, like the judo textbook. We had books on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. We had this one book that was really interesting to me back then that I can't find, and I wish I could. And I probably would laugh at it now, but I loved it at that time. It was something, the medical implications of karate blows.
I could use that. I could absolutely use that.
Well, it was like one of these things, and it would like demonstrate like the technique. It had like these really poorly drawn pictures, but it would say, like the least amount of damage, the minimum, and the maximum. So the one thing I remember that I've taken my whole entire life, there was like this chop to the upper lip, right here. Mm-hmm. And it was like minimum, if you do this technique right, you're going to bust their lip and you're going to knock their teeth out. Maximum, you could kill them because you could knock so many teeth into their windpipe that they die. So I was like 15. I thought I was an assassin. I was like, dude, if anybody messes with me from the side, like they're beside me, I'm going to chop them so hard.
They have no idea what I'm capable of.
It's like, dude, you want these? You want these chops?
Yeah, that's right.
That's really, I mean, it's funny, even though it's funny to think back and think, well, I wasn't a kid. I mean, I was, but I wasn't a child, I should say. But I thought, like, this is awesome. I'm going to karate chop somebody to death if they break into my house.
Yeah. It's a different kind of empowerment, right? It's like, it's like you've got that secret. You've got like something that other people don't know. But the thing is, it's not even just a secret that's just innocuous, right? It's my secret could affect the course of your life.
Exactly. I didn't think about it in those terms, but I do now.
Yeah.
It was totally like that. It was just, in my mind, it was something different, but it gave me some source of confidence. I grew up kind of hard. I was always fighting, but really, when you think when you're young, and even now, talk to people and they're like, oh, if somebody pulls a gun on me, I'm going to do this, or they pull a knife on me, I'm going to do that. I really thought at that point, like, oh, if somebody pulls a knife on me or a gun, I'm going to chop them in the
All
lip.
I got to do is this.
That's all I got to do. I do it hard and I land it clean. They're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
This is better than a gun. It never runs out of bullets.
That's right. It's always loaded, man.
Yeah. It's funny because, around that time, around 15, I really wanted to do jujitsu, but there was nowhere to do it. Right. I didn't know of anywhere. And back then there was no internet, at least not accessible to me. And so I would look in the phone book and I never found anything. By this point, jujitsu had gotten really interesting to me because there had been a couple of years of UFCs. So Royce Gracie had dominated 4 at this point. And 4, it got a little iffy. I think it was 4 when he had some trouble, but just seeing him mow through these people, it was like, there's something to this, because, he's beaten Ken Shamrock and Pat Smith and these legit guys who would destroy most everybody else.
Yes.
So I remember I used to get Black Belt magazines and there would be ads for UFC in there. And there was one, it was the Ultimate Fighting Alliance.
Okay.
And you could spend $40. It was part of the UFC at the time. It wasn't the Zuffa era or anything like that. This was pre that. That was what, SEG or SCG,
first
whatever.
incarnation, yeah.
Yeah. And but the thing with this Ultimate Fighting Alliance is $40 a year. You send your money, then they would update you on different disciplines, where there was to train near you. It was like this slew of information that you can get for free now with Google. But back then it seemed like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So I got $40 and I put it in an envelope. I sent it off. And then like every month they would send me some pamphlet that was basically useless. All it really told me was, okay, there's nothing near you.
Yeah.
Like,
let me just remind you of what you're lacking right now.
Yeah. Thank you for your $40. Here's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But when I got into high school, it was like, well, there's wrestling. So, I started wrestling in high school, and that was as close as I could get. The funny thing is I'd done so much makeshift basement jujitsu with my brother that I was comfortable off my back. He was older than me. He's bigger than me. And in jujitsu, that wasn't a problem. And you get into wrestling, it's like, oh, what, you pinned me?
Yeah.
What
does that mean?
Oh, I can't be down here? So that took a little while to get over. But I did freestyle and I did collegiate and for a few years. And it was after high school that I got my first taste of legitimate Brazilian jiu-jitsu instruction. But I've been doing jiu-jitsu since that time. I graduated in 98. I would say it was probably the end of 98, beginning of 99. Where I got my first legitimate taste of what jiu-jitsu was all about. And that really helped me understand that my little karate blows weren't going to go as planned.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a different environment.
Yeah.
Not as sterile.
Right. When somebody's fighting back or where somebody's doing something different.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in that though, right? I mean, like you said, your parents were martial artists to a degree. Did they ever? And was there a particular style that they studied, or? It
was an Okinawan style, okay. And I couldn't tell you who. My mom did it briefly, and my dad studied all the way up to black belt, but I couldn't tell you who it was. By the time I was born, he had already moved on, basically.
Oh, okay.
He kept the skills, but he put himself through college doing sword demonstrations and breaking bricks and boards and stuff like that. But he had hurt himself, I think, enough by the time I was born. I was the last child I was on out there that he had just moved on. So
okay, so you didn't have, it wasn't anything that they were practicing, very seriously by the time that you were born. Okay.
Right. I wasn't going to the dojo with him. I wasn't going to the gym like I do with my kids and when we train.
Gotcha.
At the same school.
So, but did they ever kind of try to push you in that direction, or was that was just because of the money situation, they just didn't do it? Yeah,
it was. I think it was one of those things that my parents would have loved for me to be able to do, but it just wasn't there. I actually lived with my mom. I didn't live with my dad, but I saw him often. He was very involved, but I didn't live with him. He had more money than we had, I should say. But to him, I think he was pretty much just Like you do whatever you need to do. And I don't know if I ever even expressed to him that I wanted to do it. I know after I took like a month-long class at a middle school when I was in elementary school, and I was kicking at him while he was doing the dishes one day because I knew I'm like, come on, Dad. I know a few things. Let's fight.
Yeah.
Let's fight. I can take you because I did a month of karate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember this transformed my entire life. And I'm still afraid of my dad, even though he's way smaller than I am at this point and walks with a cane. But he's washing his dish. He never looked up. I'm kicking at him. And in a blink of an eye, he's got his fingers wrapped around my throat. They're touching behind my Adam's apple. And he kept rubbing his dish. And he said, boy, are you going to let me finish my dishes or I'm going to have to rip your throat out? And I said, you can finish your dishes. It was more, throaty and spitty because he was choking me essentially. Yeah. But I remember in that moment, I was like, wow, this dude didn't even look at me. He didn't even glance to see where I was. But somehow he grabbed right a hold of my neck.
Uh-huh. He got those manuals that you were getting. He had the secret now.
And it's funny because my whole life, basically, if I have a threat, like just messing around threat, my friends would tell you it's I'm going to rip your throat out. And that's, everybody thinks it's Roadhouse, but no, it's from Stephen Pearson. It's from my dad. He was washing the dishes.
Oh, that's great.
Because I thought that's the most scared that I've ever been. And it was legit. I knew he wasn't going to kill me, but I wasn't sure he wasn't going to really hurt me.
Right. There was a level of risk there. It was very real.
Yeah. And there was a level of badassery. Sorry if I can't say that on your
No, you're good, man. Yeah.
Podcast. There was a level of badassery in that moment that I had not attained or witnessed in live and in person.
and I could only imagine that coming from your dad too. I mean that takes it to a completely different level, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? It's not like, oh yeah, it's on TV and there's like a kind of a separation there. Like, not only is this real life, not only is this viscerally in front of my face right now, but it is the guy that I came from. Yeah.
And it was just so cool and calm.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even mad at me. It was just like, dude, leave me alone. And I left him alone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like he was still like he was upset about it. It was literally just that blip in that moment in time that he really showed me. And honestly, I think about that all the time, and I always have, because it just made an impression. And I've always known that he was really into it when he was younger, before I was alive. So it's definitely always been a part of who I am, and I'm sure it's a big piece of what's drawn me to martial arts my entire life. I mean, I'm 38 now, and legitimately practicing martial arts for the last 20 years. Legitimately. And we could go further back if we want to talk about the books, but that really was, that was a lot of fun, and it did teach me some things, but it was really more of, the blind leading the blind. But
well, but there was a willingness there, right? I mean, and I think like, particularly for me, I don't know if you, I'm sure you feel the same way, but there's a difference between somebody that shows up in your class that just seems to be just going through the motions, or it wasn't their idea to be there. Yeah. Versus the ones that are really looking to be there. And sometimes that shows up day one. Other times it shows up 2-3 months, maybe a couple of years later, where there's like a change from, okay, what's this? What's the next move in the curriculum or whatever, to, I want to know. There's a hunger there, right? You and your brother had that, but you even prior to that, you talked about fighting. Now, was it just like a kind of a thing between you and your brother, like kind of a sibling thing? Was it like external forces? Were you bullied? How did that come to fruition in your life growing up?
Well, the neighborhood that I lived at that we lived in when I was younger, there were a lot of kids, and I'll say kids from like, 8 or 9 to 18. And I knew all of them because I have, my brother is 9 years older than 9.5 years older than me. My sister's 7 years older than I am. So I was kind of involved with all these kids. I knew them all, and they all knew me. And back then it was just a different time, a different generation where you fought all the time. I mean, you'd get mad and say something about somebody's mom that you totally liked, that gave you Kool-Aid when you were at our house or something, but like your mom's fat, or I mean, you just get the your mom stuff going, and everybody, it's like he said something about my mom, I got to fight.
Yeah.
And then there were other times where I had older guys that were taking stuff from me. They would come over to see my brother or my sister, and they would steal things from me. And my brother had a bad attitude and a chip on his shoulder, and he kind of gave that to me. And I was a chubby kid, so it was my brother wasn't, my sister wasn't, I was. So I got it, always about being fat, and then people taking stuff from me because I was always around older kids. And it really just transferred into, well, I want to be as tough as my brother, and I don't want anybody to take anything from me, and I'm tired of them calling me fat. I don't want anybody talking about my mom because I love my mom. And so we fought all the time. And then when I went to school, I had developed such a chip on my shoulder that it didn't seem feasible to me not to fight. Like if you started something with me, then we should just fight. And it wasn't like I was never looking for it.
You had no problem getting into it either.
Right.
Yeah.
I had no problem. And then that comes a lot from my brother. My brother would say, don't ever let anybody mess with you. Even though he would mess with me like crazy. That's right. And his closest friends would, but it was more like, you get older and you see what that stuff, there's almost a purpose to it.
A bit of hazing in there, and like initiation.
But, yeah, but by the time I hit school, there was a lot of people who didn't have that experience. They didn't have an older brother that beat them up. They were just used to trying to bully somebody, and then all of a sudden, you run across a kid who's been beaten up by his brother for the last couple of years, pretty harsh. And I'm not afraid of anybody that I'm going to go to school with if I'm not afraid of my brother who's 9 years older than me. So there was a sense of confidence there, and just like, I'm not going to take it. I don't care if I have a mullet and you don't like it and you don't like that I'm chubby. Like, we're going to fight if you're going to keep saying this. Like, either stop or let's see who's the alpha here.
Yeah. And that's interesting though, because I mean, it's just you were exposed to a lot of different forms of, or different levels of conflict, right? Particularly physical. It wasn't just like, okay, there's this kid, at school verbally abusing me, just whatever, trying to beat me down. It was just like, hey man, even with my buddies, something slips out or whatever, kids are going to be kids. And then, it just went to fists, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't, it was you just did it. You did it. You handled it. And that's not to say that they weren't rough fights.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to lose, but you fought hard. And then when you were done, you were done.
Yeah.
It was, there's not much that could be said after that. And then you were buddies again because you needed people to hang out with.
That's very different from today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like any, particularly if it's outside of a dojo or a ring or a sanctioned event, where if you see any kind of blows, it's not healthy. Automatically, it's not healthy. It's not, I can't say natural. They could say it's natural, but it's something that we should not allow. Fight against that part of our nature.
Mm-hmm. I think as men, there's something in there. I mean, we're hardwired to compete and to fight at some level. And no, don't get me wrong. I think there's healthy ways to do that. That's one of the reasons why I love martial arts so much, is that not only do you get that out of yourself, you get to compete, and you get to test yourself against other people, but you get to do it in a way that where you're friends. You in jiu-jitsu, you slap and tap, and then you go. And I tell that to my Croft students, because we have a jiu-jitsu class that goes on at the same time. They're just on the mat over, and I think sometimes my Croft class thinks that those guys are Superman because they just train so hard, and it's like, well, that's the standard. That's what we're going to get you to. Yeah. And if you go over there, they're gonna put it on you while asking you how your week's been. Yeah. Like how are the kids? Yeah. Oh, I grilled some steak yesterday. It was delicious. And they're trying to rip your arm off, but that's
yeah.
And there's no ego. It's just a good time, and everybody's learning. And it's like, you can be rolling with somebody that's a higher level than you, and they start to do something maybe you tap, maybe you just ask them to slow down. You're like, how did you do that? And they tell you, like it's not, I want to kill you, or I'm going to try to get away with your money, or I'm stealing your car. It's good, healthy competition, and you learn.
Let me ask you, because I mean, it was around college or after college that you discovered, like you actually formally started with jiu-jitsu training?
Yeah, it was around 98, 99. And really some guys I went to church with started up like a Monday night, and you could just go until you fell out. We would start at like 7 and we would roll till like 12. But there were 2 purple belts and a black belt. And we all threw in some money and we bought some mats, and we would clear out room in the church, and we would roll in the church. Yeah. And so, I wasn't at a gym, I wasn't at a dojo, I wasn't paying anybody, but I was rolling with 2 purples and a black. It wasn't like it was just me and my brother in the basement. It was guys who knew what they were doing, who knew what they were talking about, who could really explain the intricacies of positions that I didn't know. I mean, there's not so much a book can cover. A book can't really tell you every little nook and cranny of a technique. And something like jujitsu, technique is a big thing. I mean, arm angle is a big thing. How you go about getting to a certain position is a big thing. The elbows, I didn't read that in my book, but then I realized, so there's a gap here that has to be filled, unless with my body parts and not
there
parts,
right.
That spells me getting hurt or me tapping. So these guys were really connecting the dots, and that went on for years and years. I didn't do it all the time because I really got into playing music, and the opportunity was there to really fulfill that side of a dream that I had for my life. So I did a lot of music and traveled around and did some of that. And then whenever I was home, I would go train jujitsu, but we only did one night a week, but it was for hours. I mean, it was longer than any class that you would ever take. And it was a really good time. I mean, it was a great time. Some invaluable training, because sometimes it might only be 4 people. So, but you would have such opportunity to work with higher level guys and just get all your questions answered. And still to this day, there's certain things that I do that I'll think back at those times and I'm like, oh, that's what they meant. Like, that makes sense now. And I always think that's my baseline. So I always think back to that time.
How long did it take you to get to that comfort level of just the process, right? I mean, I feel like, hey, it's not something that's going to happen in one session. It's not going to happen overnight. And on top of that, getting tapped out, getting choked, getting the bit of that adrenaline, they're like, oh man, they've got me now. Of course, obviously in a safe environment, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it can be frustrating.
Oh yeah, totally. And I don't really know exactly when I hit that. I think that I realized pretty early on that I only really got mad at my brother. When I would roll with people, I would only get mad at him. And it never worked out to my advantage. He always beat me. Yeah. He always beat me. He could always exploit it. And as I started training more towards the mid 2000s, 2006, 2007, I started training a lot. 3 days jiu-jitsu, 3 days kickboxing, and I got really serious, and then it became a large priority. And at that point, I think I'd already done enough to where I don't remember having that frustration. I knew I was going to get frustrated, so that makes it, in and of itself, makes it less frustrating. And I knew that with the guys that I was training with, they were really open.
Okay.
And, most everybody that I trained with at that gym were MMA guys. Even the kickboxing, it was American kickboxing under Mark Cook, who was a great kickboxer, and he's a great kung fu guy. But that school was full of so many MMA fighters at the time that everything was kind of geared around MMA. But it was such a giving environment. Everybody was willing to teach because they wanted to learn from you. Every person you meet is better than you at something, right? So when I really embraced that as part of that journey, jujitsu, like I always tell everybody, it's my favorite martial art. I teach Krav Maga, but jujitsu is my favorite. I love kickboxing, but jujitsu is my favorite. And part of that is because you never don't know where you stand in jujitsu. Because every single time you go to the gym, you're going to roll. And every single time at the gym, you're going to know how good you are or how bad you are. Like there was really no guesswork. You could train kickboxing and miss sparring day for a few weeks, and you really don't know. Or maybe you never spar, but you hit the bag and you hit mitts. You never really know where you're at. You can think you're better than you are. But in jiu-jitsu, you work technique for a little while. You run drills. Somebody's trying to pass your guard, or you're trying to pass somebody's guard, and you feel like throwing up. And then the work starts. It's after that, it's like get some water and come back and let's start to roll. And when you start rolling with people, especially strangers, and then if you're good, you're good. And if you're having an off night, you're tapping a lot. You realize there's no shame in that. Like you're either the hammer or the nail. Either way, you're really important. So
what? Because you played sports throughout your life. What was it that appealed to you about martial arts that made it your pursuit? I mean, like you said, you had plans on going to to play college football, and probably even dreams of getting into even pro. I mean, no, obviously there could be circumstances, that type of thing, get in the way, but you could do other things other than martial art. But you chose that. What was it about it?
Well, I did want to go and do the football thing, and I blew my knee out my senior year of high school. And that's when I got the dose of reality that my grades weren't great enough or good enough. My knee wasn't good enough anymore. It was at a really bad time. There was no way I was going to go, even without the grades. I thought, well, I could still go somewhere and walk on. I can get my grades up at the school and I could walk on. But when I blew my knee out, I had it reconstructed in September of 98. So there was no way that I was going to walk onto any campus for another year or so and do anything to impress anybody. And so then I really started doing the music, but then I always wanted to play football. That was really the main thing. It was football, and then it was martial arts, and then it was music, but music had the better opportunity. I just found myself in the right circumstance with the right people to where that became a reality. And I could tell back then that even at that point that you had to take advantage of that situation. Yes. So that moved ahead. And then when that was gone, that's a whole nother conversation. But when that was gone, martial arts was still here. I could be married and do martial arts. I could be a dad and do martial arts. I could live my life and I could still scratch an itch to compete. And just grow as a person. So, and when you get to a certain age, it's not like I'm going to go sign up for summer baseball,
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or I'm going to go play football, but I can go to a gym. I can train any number of martial arts right now if I wanted to. Just so happens I'm old enough that I've just, my interests are what they are. And I know that. Sure. Like I'm not scratching a bunch of itches. I know I like jujitsu. I know I like kickboxing. I know I like Krav Maga. So I can really focus my energies, and I can do all those at the same gym.
I think there's, I don't know, there's something about it, at least for me, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well, is that you talk about an itch. There's an itch for that kind of interaction. It's on the field, whether it's football, I played soccer, tennis, those are great. You get a great workout, a lot nice, good technique. There's definitely a level of skill in there, but the stakes are different as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something for me that it feels more real.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And you get tools from martial arts that you can take into any day, any moment of any day. And especially when you have a family.
Mm.
There's things that you learn. It's not even all technique. Sometimes it's just things you learn about yourself.
Mm.
And, that's what I tell my students all the time. I had a girl last night that we're teaching, and it's Krav Maga, so you don't do a lot of grappling, but you do some. And a lot of it has to do with getting up off the ground, getting away from somebody. So we're teaching them how to shrimp. And we're doing shrimp drills. And for anybody that may listen that doesn't know what a shrimp is, you can go look it up on YouTube. It's a way to get away from somebody in a grappling arena. So this girl's brand new. She'd never heard of a shrimp or seen a shrimp. It's not an intuitive move. It's a terribly, counterintuitive move, but it's what works. But I had them shrimping down the mat. I had everybody doing two laps. And if you did your 2 laps, then you're standing there, you're shadow boxing or you're doing jumping jacks. I didn't want anybody to rest. And she had a really hard time. And everybody was finished with their 2 before she was halfway finished with the first one. And I could see that she was starting to get frustrated, but she was still working hard. She got to the end and she ran and she joined everybody and started shadow boxing. I said, "What are you doing? Everybody's done 2." And I could see in her face at that moment, she's like, "You're going to make me do this? Like, everybody's waiting on me and everybody's suffering." And I'm like, everybody here wants you to do it just as much as I do. And you can. And so, to her credit, I could tell she was frustrated. I could tell she was a little scared because everybody was watching her. She just got down and did it. And I'm telling you, it was amazing. She'd been doing it for, I don't know, months, which is great. And your second lap that you've ever done it. And she's doing really good. That pressure of everybody watching, everybody's cheering. That's part of what we do in Krav. Everybody's cheering because nobody wants to see anybody fail. We're all there to work and help each other. But she flies down the mat doing good work, doing really good work. And, you see that frustration switch to this, oh my gosh, I just did that. Yeah. I didn't just do it. I killed it. Like, that was good. And everybody's high-fiving her and you could see something in her eyes that was that, wow, I didn't think I could do that, but I did that, and whether it's sports or martial arts, it gives you those things that you learn about yourself. You learn techniques. That's great. But when you realize that you can do something that you thought you couldn't, when somebody goes, "I don't care if you don't think you can, I believe you can. So I need to see you do it." And that happens. And then you're like, wow, I'm tougher than I thought, and we have a motto at our gym in the Krav class: you go home tougher than you came. Every class you go home tougher than you came, whether that's just learning something, which could be philosophy, could be a mindset exercise, or through pushing past physical barriers or mental barriers, or just really punishing your body to see how much it can take. But every single time you leave our gym, it's my goal to make you tougher than you showed up. And I think that's what people pay for. I think that's what they come for, to learn a martial art. And it's not so they can go out and test it in the streets, but it's so they've got it in their back pocket. And it really does help. I mean, as well as I do, you can get in a gym and you might walk in there thinking you're the baddest dude on the planet and get throttled by the smallest person in the room. And then you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I won't walk.
Get myself in check a little bit more. Yeah. Nice reminder. Thank you.
Yeah. You never really quite know about somebody. And I don't know, that relieves some sort of pressure in your day-to-day life. You look at the world different. You look at people differently. It doesn't seem, you don't walk through the street thinking about who you could dominate. Right. You walk through the street knowing that you're just a person that the smallest guy in the room could tap out 12 times in 6 minutes, or that could tap out the largest guy in the room a few times. Right. And it's all just even. It all just matters the day. Every human is worth the life they're living. And when you do martial arts and you see people make those connections, like the girl I was talking about in the class, it's not the only example. There's tons of them, and you don't have to be an instructor to see those. You just be in the room. We've had them ourselves. I'm sure you've had those moments. I've had those moments where I did things I didn't think I was capable of, and you start to want that for other people. You don't want to beat somebody up. Right. you almost want to like put your arm around them when they're being crazy. Be like, dude, calm down.
Yeah.
Here's a free week at the gym.
Yeah.
You know, like,
That's right. We can
let's
help you
work
with
this
it.
out.
Yeah, right, right. Well, you mentioned your kids earlier. What has your approach been with your children and martial arts? I mean, as you were growing up, you didn't really get exposed to, aside from, your little incident with your dad.
Yeah.
But what has your approach been with your own kids?
So this is multifaceted. When we first started, I was really just looking for something for my kids to get into. Okay. I went through a rough divorce at the time, and it was just me and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I've been training consistently. I was training to start fighting, and it pretty much threw a wrench in a lot of that, because now I'm taking care of 2 very young kids full time. Not only did it become hard to afford the same amount of training that I was doing, but I couldn't get hurt. If I got hurt, I couldn't make money. So basically stopped training for a little while, and then I found places where they could train too, and I could train. So it started off, it was almost selfish. Give them an activity. Although I've always wanted them to do it, but they were young. So the first taste of it was, I wanted to be able to train.
Yeah. It's convenient.
But I wasn't going to have
there.
Yeah. I wasn't going to sit them in the parent room, because they were so young.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, now they do it, but now they're older. We're talking 2, 4, 3 and 5 type age ranges. And they had just lost their comfort zone. We lived in a different house. Mom wasn't around. Things were a lot different. I wasn't going to keep them in a room for a couple hours, every night or every other night. So it really started off kind of selfish in that respect. Then I just wanted them to be active. They were doing kids MMA and they did fine, but they weren't really learning stuff. They were a little intimidated. There were a lot of bigger kids in the class, until we found where we're at now. And it was more of a traditional martial arts program for the kids. As soon as we walked in, my son was like, bing, I saw the light go off in his head, and he loved it every day since. And if I don't want to train, there's no way he's going to let me not train. He's going to be on. He's like, come on, Dad, let's go do this. And he's amazing with it. And he's inspired. I think he's inspired his sisters more so than me. But there's 7 people in my family. 6 of us train all the time. And 1 trains sometime. But when I said it's multifaceted, at this point, my mindset has changed a lot. Because back in 2013, my sister was murdered. I had a sister that was murdered, and it's a crazy story. I won't get into the whole story, but basically somebody broke into her house and they beat her with a breaker bar. They beat her to death with a breaker bar. And, I can't help. She fought back and she fought back and she did whatever she could to live, but she didn't know anything. She didn't, all she knew what to do was to just throw and grab, like what you would intuitively know. And I can't help to this day, and I can't shake the thought that if she had just known a little bit of what to do if somebody was swinging something at you, she could have done 2 weeks of Krav Maga, and it could have saved her life. Because just a little bit, just a little bit to keep you keep you alive, to show somebody that you're not as easy as they thought. So now it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you're going to train. And I require a certain amount of it from them, just so they'll know some things. I don't care if they become champions. I don't care if they all get their black belts. I would love them to. You know what I mean? I would love to see that happen. I would love to see them make a life out of all this. But the biggest thing to me right now is I think it's more important to know some things. And it was really important when we started this school, this dojo, when we started going to the place that we're all at now, that they taught applicable self-defense to the kids. You know, it meant something to me that it wasn't just all kata based. I think there's value there. I don't want to say that there's not. There's a lot of value to, especially for kids, for traditional martial arts and forms and katas and things like that. But like twice a month, they go on these full on, like basically Krav Maga. There's the full on self-defense things, and they're hitting pads, and they're protecting against weapons, and they're little, but they're learning. And that was really important to me. Because like I said, I mean, just the slightest bit of knowledge I think could have saved my sister. And so I want to make sure that my kids have that, you know, and fulfill your commitments. You know, you always sign a commitment when you sign up to a gym, whether that be a year, or some of them have 3 years, whatever. I'm like, fulfill the commitments, train, and learn. I mean, I have a dojo basically at my house. I have mats on the floor, and I've got bags, and we do stuff here. Sometimes I just teach them stuff that I want them to know. But I do require it for those real applicable reasons above and beyond, or with alongside things like the respect and just the humility and stuff like that.
How do you approach something like that with them? Because I mean, it's one thing to say, or do you? Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, you're going to this program. It's like an equivalent of going into Little League, right?
Yeah.
It's completely different when it's introduced as, or even just trying to broach the subject of, this is to keep you safer.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean,
well, I don't know that I necessarily did that at first with my two, and then I got remarried, and I married into three lovely daughters, and I didn't want to necessarily force them to do it. We could have done it all at the house. I would have forced them to learn some things at the house. Maybe that sounds rough. It is what it is. I would have forced them to learn a few techniques. But like I said, I think my son has been really inspirational, not only to his biological sister, but to his stepsisters. He's just really taken to it, and so have they. I mean, I got a house full of killers here. I got to be on top of my game. I can't stop training. Nobody would listen to me in my house if I did. But with my stepdaughters, it was told like, okay, well, we're going to do this regardless. But they moved from a different town. It wasn't like a different state, but a different town. So they didn't know a lot of people. And it gave them a way to meet friends. And I don't know if I ever really like broke it down super hard. It was like, you can do this if you want. We do this. So, and my wife was going to do it. Like, so it's either you can participate or you can sit here and watch us do it.
We're going to be here anyway, so it's up to you.
Yeah. And you know, I wished I had like some great answer, but I think if I was having to have that conversation at this point and talk about it, and you know, I don't really, with kids of a certain age, I don't have a problem with you as a parent doing things for them, or forcing is a strong word, but requiring them to try things, right? So, you know, a kid gets to a certain age, maybe that gets harder. But when kids are younger, when they're 4, 5, 6, maybe even up to like 7, 8, even if they're older, really. I mean, if you're the parent, I think there's a certain level there. If you go, this is needed, and you know, I want you to do this, and that's up to each parent to make that call. I just don't see a personal problem with it, but I wouldn't require them to do it always. If an example, my daughter came up to me a while back and she said, I don't want to do this anymore. I would like to do something else. And the way I told her is, you made a commitment. So if you made a commitment, you have to see the commitment through. That's all I'm requiring of you. If you do this commitment and then you still want to move on, then you can do it, because you fulfilled your commitment to the contract we signed with the school, and you fulfilled it with me when I made the financial investment in this. And honestly, by the time that commitment was up, there's been no mention I've asked her, but she's like, "What are you talking about? I'm going to quit." Her
this
best
is
friends are at
life.
the dojo.
Yeah.
She loved it.
Yeah.
She's moved up. She's moved up belt rank. She's on the demo team now. She's on the leadership team. Like, she's done these things that she would have, as much as I love baseball, it's not like I was getting recognized for being a great leader on my baseball team. You know what I mean? It wasn't building that level of confidence within me. But yeah, I mean, I'm big on commitment. I'm big on, like, if you need to learn this, you just need to learn this. So if I'm as a parent say you need to do this, you just need to do it, at least for a certain amount of time. I believe in minimum requirements, like, okay, here's the minimum. You got to meet this. You can do as much as you want. There's the minimum. And does that answer your question at all?
I guess, I mean, do you broach this, or how do you broach the subject of, you might have to use this in some way now, because there's a surface level of that, right? Because there's a lot of just self-defense this, self-defense that. Oh, what if you do this because it's a plastic knife or it's a plastic gun or whatever? So it's easy to stay on that surface level of, like, that's just the terminology, right? Mm-hmm. But then getting it to the point where, and again, I don't, I guess that's my question is, do you get any deeper than that? Is it necessary to get any deeper than that? Do you just hope that they somehow get it? Because you don't want to traumatize your kids, right? There's a difference between sheltering them from the bad things that happen everywhere and laying it on like, it's fire and brimstone kind of thing, where they don't want to leave the house. So how do you find that balance?
I've been really forthright with them all, and I have told them about their Aunt Dana. They know what happened to their aunt, give or take. I mean, they don't know all the details, but they know that somebody took her life, right? And they know that I believe that if she had had some sort of training, that it wouldn't have happened. So they know that that's one of the reasons why I'm so serious about it, and why I teach Krav Maga and why I train as hard as I do. They know that that's an underlying thing. Like, that's a big driving factor. Also, I have told them that it's strength to know. If they can actually feel more confident when if they go outside and play, they can feel a little bit more confident because they do know something. And I have told, there is a thin line, and I think it changes from kid to kid. Okay. So I think there's a responsibility as a parent to figure that out, or to kind of know that with your children anyway. There's also a responsibility for some form of honesty with them. Like you said, like, you don't want to traumatize them, but you want to protect and empower, not scare and paralyze. So, we work on some things, like, we have like little plans here and there. If something happens, or if you're in a store and you think something's weird, follow that, So my kids know enough to where I think they feel like they could actually not defeat an adult, but they could defend themselves. And that's important, because I don't want them to ever think about trying to defeat somebody that's twice their size, because you can run away. All you gotta do is buy enough time and space, and they know how to do that. And I think they're actually confident in the fact that they're not easy targets. And I've explained the fact that you don't want to be an easy target for anything in life. Doesn't mean you have to be rude. Doesn't mean you have to be aggressive. Just don't be an easy target. So empower them, speak to them in ways that let them know where the power lies and not where the fear lies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that speaks to me. That's particularly in avoiding nightmares, right? Yeah. It's like, what do you continue to speak about? Do you continue to speak about, get away from this situation, or no, we're going towards this situation here, you know? And like, to your point of they're seeing it as options, giving them more options. It's like trying to spell using an alphabet, but you're missing half the letters.
Yeah.
But like, here, and it's just a matter of fact thing. There doesn't have to necessarily be any emotion associated with that. Definitely, it doesn't have to be a negative emotion. Maybe a little bit like, wouldn't it kind of be annoying to have to try to spell with only half the letters? Oh, wouldn't it be great if you had all of them? Okay, let's just give you all of them then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, talking over things like, what if we were at the store and we got separated and somebody came up and asked you if you were lost, how would you do this? This is how I would like you to do it. Just letting them know the options, like you said. And we have little things. If we're out and I've got a bunch of kids and we're all out together, I've got this motto, and it cracks my wife up now and other people, but I say, I don't keep up with kids. They keep up with me. So there's times where we get separated and we have, we'll either Marco Polo or, we have a little whistle and they could answer back and I'll know if they're close. But also if I yell line, my kids know they have to come get in that line. Like I said, I've got 5 kids, travel a lot with 4 of them. One's a little older, but if I yell line, they get right behind me as if something bad is going down. And, my son's in the back and the girls are in the middle. So, and when we're staggered, we can see everything that's going on, and I'll practice it. I might just, we did it the other day at the bookstore. I got to where I couldn't hear the giggles enough. So I yelled line, and I even took a video, and they come running to get into this line. And it's not because they're afraid of me.
Yeah. That's just the way it is. That's just,
they weren't even afraid of a bad situation. I have a video, they come up laughing, but they're getting to me. And that's really important to me because I don't want them to freak out and paralyze. I'm your protector. Come to me. And if I can teach that, where you come to me and you stay where I can know where you're at and I can see the threat. That's why my son's in the back of the line. He's the oldest and the biggest of the kids that are usually with me. So he can cover my back and their backs, and I can cover everybody's front. And, I've taught them about active shooters. If somebody comes into their school or into a store that they're at, run, hide, fight. Run if you can, hide if you can't run, fight if you can't hide. And gave them permission that if you've got to fight to, if somebody's trying to shoot people and you've got to fight really dirty and throw stuff or hurt them permanently, then you got to do what you got to do. Right. And I think in today's world that's how you got to teach them. You have to teach them to be strong and powerful, and give them permission to do things that maybe not be intuitive. You got to give permission your kids, or give your kids permission to survive and fight. You don't have to run, but it's a good option when it's there. You don't have to fight or hide, but it's a good option when it's there. And if you have to fight with everything that you got. If you have to fight for your life, fight like your life depended on it. Don't fight like they fight in the UFC. Don't fight like they fight in boxing. Don't fight like a fight at school. Fight like you want to live. And, they know the difference. I make sure that they know the difference between what's a life-threatening situation and what's just somebody making you mad. Somebody makes fun of you at school. That's not fight to survive. You just turn around and walk away. Somebody's holding a gun and shooting people and you can't get away from them. That's fight for your life. Because I think permission is an important thing. I think permission, I tell my students a lot, adults, if you're coming here to this class to learn how to defend yourself, you need to give yourself permission to defend yourself. You'd be amazed at how hard that is to really pull the trigger on protecting yourself if you've never actually told yourself it was okay to do.
Right.
If I walked up to somebody on the street and I said, punch me as hard as you can in the face, no one will do it. Even if I said, okay, well, punch me as hard as you can in my stomach. They might hit me. They're not going to hit me as hard as they can. I could say that to somebody at my gym, people that I'm training with that know I'm tough and that I can take it. If I'm not wearing a body shield and I said, hey, kick me in the side as hard as you can, 9 out of 10 people won't. You hear stories as a Krav Maga instructor, you read, keep up on what's going on and what's happening in the world. And you find out that there's a lot of people who just ignore warning signs because they haven't given themselves permission to be rude to somebody who's being rude to them. Yeah. somebody's encroaching on your space and touching you, or, don't wait until the situation gets dire. You can say, hey, get away from me. I'm not real comfortable right now.
It's almost like to a point of, I think a lot of it is actually it's just disbelief,
Yeah.
just frozen out of, I can't believe this is happening to me right now. Yeah. And it's even just like, it's almost like a track that just keeps on repeating. I can't believe this. I can't believe it's getting closer. I can't believe this is not happening. This is not happening. And that's a challenging thing. Particularly, it's easier to say those things and be in that space if what they've been hearing is that this is just not something that is kosher to do. This is not something that, because it's not kosher to do, it's, nobody's going to do it. There's no one who's going to do those types of things to me. Well, that's really not, dude, we can go on and on. We could talk for another 5 hours on this, man. But,
oh, totally.
This was amazing. This was amazing.
I apologize. I have no short answers to any questions.
No, dude, we're looking for, insights. There's no, and that's just kind of like, this is the way it goes, man. And you definitely dropped some insights in here today. I appreciate it. We got to get onto this again. And there's a lot of places we can go. I want to go even deeper, particularly in this bit here, as it applies to family and as it applies to just more of like self-defense kind of stuff, Yeah. But in the meantime, though, if people wanted more from you, where could they go? Well,
you could go on Facebook. I'm Blaze Pearson. I also I run a coaching firm called Torch Family Leadership. It's probably backwards here behind me if anybody's watching the video. I don't know if you put videos up, but Torch Family Leadership on Facebook, on Instagram at Blaze Pearson, also at Torch_family_leadership, and I have a blog at torchfamilyleadership.com. Email Blaze at torchfamilyleadership.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever. If anybody has any, if anybody's into coaching, I can wrap that into self-defense as well. I teach Krav Maga at Premier Martial Arts Powder Springs. It also help people find some place close to them. I'm a part of Krav Maga Universal. I'm an instructor in Krav Maga Universal. I'm an instructor, obviously, at Premier School. So between those two organizations, there's schools everywhere. So if anybody listens to this and they want to get involved in any of this stuff, then shoot me an email, and I can most likely find a school near you.
Blaze, man, this was great. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Folks, I hope you appreciated that conversation with Blaze. I really enjoyed it. Really a great guy, laid back, but also you can tell the seriousness in how he approaches self-defense and making sure that not only he, but also his family is well prepared for anything that might come. Really a lot of great lessons there. But that is it for today's episode. Again, this is Philip with the Everyday Fighter Podcast. Talk to you next time.